Yeah, so welcome. This is our Cancer Killer seminar, and I will apologize up front that this topic is much more slide heavy than I prefer to do. Typically, I like just as minimal amount of slides and tell stories, but we're talking about cancer. We're not talking about toe fungus. So, like, we need some data and some information to give you, and hopefully this will be impactful for you too. And then, just as a disclaimer, I'm not an oncologist. So for those of you that are not aware, I'm not an oncologist. I'm not a interventional radiologist. Cancer is not my medical training and specialty, but I can read, and so can you guys. So everything we're going to show you is backed in the literature. We're not shooting from the hip. We're going to be referencing a lot of really the pioneers in the treatment of cancer and prevention of cancer and some of the more non-traditional or more non-conventional treatments. So we're going to show you basically how to reverse this and keep it from at bay. So I know, by the way, too, that this is a very emotional topic. So for people that have dealt with cancer, I don't take that lightly. It's a horrific condition, really just a terrible disease. If you've watched other people go through it, or if you've gone through it yourself, I'm very prayerfully aware of the fact that people are this condition is held quite closely to the heart. So, and then the last thing is just I want you to really leave with the hope that your body can heal itself. We have an amazing, unbelievable capacity to heal inside of our human body. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, and our bodies have the capacity to heal if we give it what it needs and we remove what's interfering with it. So that's the overview. So when we look at our crisis that we're in with the current cancer system, and this is just taken 2013 to 2020. So you're looking at just basically those 8 years, and we see over that period of time an 8.1% increase in the total number of new cases and a 4% increase in the number of deaths. So really, when you look at the totality of the system, the system itself is a complete failure when it comes to how we deal with cancer. Now, you can look at individual parts and pieces of the cancer treatment system. It's amazing. Like you look at some robotics and lasers and some things that they can do with immunotherapies and hormone therapies and proton therapy. I mean, we all know people who've gotten amazing results with cancer. They've gone through treatment and chemo, and they're still here 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years later. And then we all know people on the other end of that went through conventional care and they were dead, within months or weeks or sometimes years. So we've seen both sides of that picture. So individual pieces of the system are amazing, but as a whole, the system is failing. Um, if you had a business that was losing 8% profit every year, would that business be a success or a failure? If you had an educational system where the kids could consistently read less and less at their appropriate grade level, would that be a success or failure of the educational system? Right? If you had a monthly budget where you're losing money every month, like we understand, like as a whole. So when you kind of zoom in a little bit to the more recent years, from 2015, we've actually seen a 20.7% increase in the number of new cases in the U.S. And then when you look at deaths, it's almost 4%. And you notice like we had a good little dip there, or it started to kind of flatten out a little bit, and then around 2018 it peaked. And then right around the end of 2021, we saw a big spike. And do anyone know what was rolled out at the end of 2021? The COVID vaccines. So now we're seeing cases of 30-year-old women with ovarian cancer, and we're seeing 40-year-old women with breast cancer, and we're seeing 20-year-olds with colon cancer. So we're seeing these explosion of new cancers that really were unprecedented prior to the rollout of those vaccines. Now, this is going to sound controversial. Quite frankly, I don't care. But as the data continues to keep coming out, we're seeing more and more that there's something about the rollout date that coincides with an explosion of new cancer cases. So 55 years ago, Nixon signed into action. He said, if we could just raise $1 billion, that's all we need. If we can raise $1 billion, we can end cancer. We could find a cure. And over those 55 years, it's consistently gotten worse and worse and worse. But here's where we're at now. It's 1 out of 2 men and 1 out of 3 women will be diagnosed with cancer at some point in their life. It's the leading cause of death in Canada, and they're estimating by about 2030 it's going to surpass heart disease as the leading cause of death in the United States. So it's climbing every single year. 2 million new cases alone in 2024, which racks up 610,000 deaths, and it's the second leading cause of death in children following accidents. And by 2030, about a 75% rise if the numbers keep climbing. So we say the cause is the cure, and what that really means is cancer doesn't make us sick. Like that, I know that's hard to kind of rationalize, but cancer doesn't make us sick. It's a sick body that allowed the cancer to take hold and thrive and to multiply. So if we just treat the cancer, if we just debulk the tumor, if we just radiate and cut out and use chemotherapy to destroy cancer, you're not getting to why the cancer was there in the first place. So oftentimes on the other end of the chemo radiation surgery, you're dealing with a more sick, more toxic, more deficient body. So the cancer doesn't make us sick. It's a sick body that allows the cancer to take hold and thrive. So if we're going to reverse this or never get it in the first place, we have to know what it is and we have to know what causes it. And we'll break that down individually. But that pink ribbon, by the way, we used to, in the month of October, I can't stand the color pink. The whole race for a cure, raise your hand if you're not aware of breast cancer. Like we all are aware, we don't need any more breast cancer awareness. And here's the thing, I'm all about a survivor and an overcomer. I love cause marketing. I think it's amazing and great. But when less than 5% of the money that's raised for the cancer walks and the walk for the cure actually goes to prevention or to the people needing the treatment in the first place, it all goes to the pharmaceutical industry and to administrative costs. When less than 5% actually goes to the people and to prevention, I have a real problem with that. And when there's pink buckets of KFC and pink cans of Progresso where they have a known carcinogen inside the tin can that they're serving the soup to you, that's evil, in my opinion. They're capitalizing on our emotion to try to sell more of their product. And that's really what the Breast Cancer Awareness Month has really turned into. And again, it's not about the people. It's not about the people that do those walks. They want to raise money and I love that. I think it's amazing. But the pharmaceutical industry is what's getting all the reserves. So it's not genetic, or in fact, it is genetic. It's what's called epigenetics. So there is control above the genome. And that's what epi means. It's above genetic control. And it's the way we manipulate our gene expression downstream from the health of the actual cell itself. So when you look at the causes of cancer, it's estimated that 90 to 95% of cancer is caused by environment. So about 5 to 10%, I've seen some estimates that show probably more like 2 to 5% is actually caused by our genes. And when you break all this down, you look at the genetic causes, so that little 5 to 10% chunk, you've got breast cancer and melanomas and prostate and laryngeal and thyroid cancers. And then when you look at the environmental causes, you have tobacco at 25 to 30%, you have diet at 30 to 35%, alcohol, obesity, infections, and there's others. And then as less tobacco smoke is the problem, because less people smoke now, so we're seeing a decrease. They think actually that one of the major revolutions or the major impact that we've had on the overall cancer picture is really just the smoking cessation program. That's probably where we're attributing the most promise and most progress that we've made, is by getting people to smoke less. So our body has trillions of cells. We're 76 trillion cells that work in concert with each other. Every cell has a life cycle. So the cell multiplies, it grows, and then eventually it dies. And it dies through a process called apoptosis. Hey, Sloan, can you cut that TV? Thank you. And cancer occurs when the cells don't die, when they don't turn themselves off. And it's when that apoptosis does not occur. Now, most of what we're going to cover today really comes out of the work of this guy. It's Dr. Thomas Seyfried. I highly recommend you look him up on YouTube because he'll go into a lot more of the detailed science. There's a a talk that he does where he's talking to like a CrossFit convention, and he does about an hour seminar where he breaks the stuff that we're going to be talking about. He gets much deeper into the weeds in terms of the science, but he's one of the pioneers, and his theory is it's not a genetic condition, it's a metabolic disorder. So it's not about the genes, it's about what the metabolism and specifically the mitochondria is doing to change gene expression downstream. Now that almost seems like heresy because we look at the BRCA1 and 2 gene and we've got the HER2 negative gene. Like you look at all the genes for cancer, well, if the genes cause the cancer, then why do up to 50% of the women that have the BRCA1 and 2 genes never get cancer? And why, when you look at identical twins, one will get cancer, one doesn't get cancer? So there's much more to this equation than just what genes you have at birth. Those are predispositions. Those are tendencies. Those can kind of tilt you in one direction, but the genes load the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. So that's the cell, that's the DNA. I'm going to spend the next hour kind of going through all the detailed biochemistry of how the mitochondrial function changes the expression of the genes downstream. Would you rather skip that slide? I'd like something a little more simplistic. And quite frankly, I don't even know what's all on that slide. So this is basically the research that Dr. Seyfried did. So he took a normal cell in green, and when you take a normal cell and they divide and multiply, they create two normal cells. You take a cancer cell or a tumor cell, and they subdivide and create two tumor cells. Everybody with me? Pretty basic. Now, what they did in number 3 is they took normal cytoplasm, so basically the ribosomes and the mitochondria, all the guts of the cell, except for the nucleus, which contains the DNA, that was a tumor nucleus, but they kept the rest of the cell healthy. And when that subdivided, it created normal cells. So you had the DNA and the cancer genes, but when they subdivided, they didn't create cancer cells. And then on the flip side of that, they took tumor cytoplasm, so the mitochondria and the ribosomes and all the other stuff inside the cell, but they took a normal nucleus with normal DNA, and it either created a dead cell or it created a tumor cell. Everybody with me on that? I want to make sure we're kind of all on the same page. So if the genetics were the driver, then the cancer genes would have created more cancer cells. But in fact, it was the cytoplasm and it was the other factors, particularly the mitochondria, that drove the expression of that cellular change. So this is actually really going back basically to World War II, where Otto Warburg, who, by the way, was laughed out of the profession, he should have won a Nobel Prize, but they essentially, because he was flying so in the face of the traditional medical system, they basically laughed him out of the research community in general. And his theory was that cancer arises from damage to cellular respiration. A healthy cell, we'll talk about this in a second, a healthy cell uses oxygen for energy. A cancer cell loses its ability to use oxygen for fuel. It's damage to what's called oxidative phosphorylation. So the cancer cell cannot use oxygen for fuel. It has to ferment. And when you ferment, guess what you use to ferment? Sugar. So healthy cells use oxygen. Cancer cells use sugar. So he found this to be true. And then that glucose fermentation gradually compensates for that damage to that oxidative phosphorylation. It can't use oxygen, so it starts using fermentation. And then that eventually becomes irreversible. And then those cancer cells over time will continue to keep fermenting in the presence of oxygen. So the basic takeaway from that, healthy cells, you love oxygen, and cancer cells love sugar. And I'm going to prove this to you in just a second. So this is the line. If there's a writer downer in this whole presentation, this would be it. The cause of cancer and all disease is when the cells become toxic, deficient, or decrease in function. So the cause of cancer and all diseases, whether that's multiple sclerosis or heart disease or dementia or name a condition, all diseases happen when the cells become toxic, deficient, or they have a decrease in function. So when you look at the characteristics of a healthy cell versus a cancer cell, Again, the healthy cell uses oxygen for fuel, where the cancer cell primarily uses sugar for fuel. And then the healthy cell can't use sugar, at least not efficiently, and the cancer cell cannot use oxygen for fuel. Healthy cell, slightly alkaline environment, cancer cell, slightly acidic environment, and then the healthy cell needs proper nerve supply where the cancer cell does not. So those are the major differential characteristics between healthy cells and cancer cells.
Can I take a picture of that?
Sure.
Is that okay with that phone?
Yeah, of course. And then I could send you the slideshow if you like that too, just like in a PDF file. But here's the thing, we all have cancer. Like, I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but everyone in this room has cancer. If you define cancer as having cancer cells, then we're all cancer patients. If we dissected my prostate, you'd find cancer cells. If you dissected my daughter, who's 18, dissected her liver, you'd find, if you looked close enough at every little cell and every little slide, you'd find cancer cells in the liver of my 18-year-old and also in my 4-year-old. The problem is you need millions of cells accumulated in a certain specific region to be diagnosed as having a tumor or having an active cancer. Does that make sense? So cancer is part of the normal life cycle of the body. It's just when the body can't keep it under control and you're in an environment that feeds the cancer, that's when it gets out of hand. So the normal 5 or the 5 conventional treatments, by the way, too, in America, anything outside of those 5 things is considered illegal. So you can't legally treat cancer with anything other than a combination or one of those 5 things on that list. And that would be chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, drugs, and transplantation. So that is the standard of care. Now, is there a time and a place for those 5 things? Yes. If you've got a 5-pound tumor on your kidney, take out your kidney. Right? There's a time and a place. I've got a friend that we're going to talk about in a minute. He had a grade 4 astrocytoma, which is a basic brain cancer, and his only medical treatment that he did was he had surgery to debulk and remove the tumor. So there's a time and a place that we have to use these interventions, but none of them get to the root cause. And is cancer caused by a lack of chemotherapy? Is cancer a chemotherapy deficiency disease? No. That's just basic logic. The history of chemo, most people don't realize this was originated in World War I. It's called mustine. And what they found was when they used that mustard gas on the enemy soldiers, that it killed all the fast-growing cells. So like the hair on the arms would go away, hair on the legs, like the lining of the colon, like the fast replicating cells would typically die off pretty quickly. The problem is it doesn't kill slow-growing cells, or at least not efficiently. And by the time you have a tumor, in most cases, that's been growing and brewing and developing for roughly 10 or so years. In some cases longer. So most cancers are slow growing, not fast growing. And these are the U.S. statistics on chemotherapy. So it's the impact or the benefit of chemo over the effect of 5 years survival in American adults. So it's basically how good is chemo at getting people to live to 5 years. That's basically what the chart states. And you look at the individual cancers on the left, so head and neck, esophagus, colon, rectum, pancreatic, prostate, testicular, and then your multiple sclerosis, or multiple myeloma, and your Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphomas. And you look at some of these do pretty well. So if you look at testicular cancer, there's a 37.7% survival rate due to chemotherapy. And if you look at Hodgkin's lymphoma, 40.3%, but then the rest of them are essentially abysmal. And when you look at the overall cancer picture, it's a 2.1% benefit in the increase in 5-year survival rate just using chemotherapy. So we're introducing all these poisons really to only affect lymphomas, leukemias, and testicular cancer in a real measurable, beneficial way. So some of the side effects, we all know this: deafness, destroys the skin, heart damage, chemo brain, which is basically a loss of cognitive function from the poison of the chemo, bleeding, secondary cancers, destroyed immune system, blindness, impotence, loss of taste, organ damage, pain, suicide risk goes up, weight loss, poisoning, and death. So it's almost like we kill the cancer right before it kills you. It's kind of the mantra. And some oncologists will actually say that out loud. Like, we're going to try to kill this. We're going to take you right to the breaking point, right to death's doorstep, and then we're going to stop. And then the question is, what's left to the person's health after they're done with that? Then they got to rebuild and repair. And again, I'm not against chemo. I'm not against radiation. I'm not against surgery. Like, there's a time and a place. But what should we try to employ first? Maybe things that get to the root cause and starve the cancer, not give it its primary fuel source, give some botanical compounds, which we'll talk about, to selectively kill the cancer cells and not harm the healthy cells. And 100% of chemo is considered poisonous. That's why when they deliver it or administer it, they come in like a hazmat suit, or they have to wear certain gloves. They have to in a protective suit so they don't get poisoned themselves. With surgery, some growing evidence that there's an increase in metastasis, because when you cut it, it bleeds. When it bleeds, it spreads, right? So you cut a tumor. That's why with biopsies, we have to be real careful with those, because you're biopsying. One of the worst things you'd ever want to do is you want to puncture that tumor and cause it to bleed, because when it bleeds, it spreads. So there's a lot of emerging thought and opinion that we need to really back off the biopsies. But unfortunately, those are big money. Increases cellular adhesion, suppresses the immune system, promotes angiogenesis, which in some cases, like with neuropathy, we want to increase angiogenesis. We want more blood vessels and more vasculature and more blood flow to the unhealthy area or damaged area. But with cancer, you want less angiogenesis. You don't want more blood vessels around a tumor, because then it spreads. And it stimulates inflammation. Radiation, as we know, weakens the immune system, burns the surrounding tissues, and exposes the cells to a hostile environment, which can cause mutations and cause them to have greater resistance. And then they can also cause greater levels of malignancy. So a lot of times, and you've all heard the story where someone went through chemo or radiation, and they were cancer-free for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And then it came back with a vengeance. And the conventional treatment they used the first time didn't touch it the second time around. Because what a lot of the research shows is when they do chemo radiation, they're going to debulk the tumor, but those are mostly the daughter cells. They're not the stem cells. So the cancer stem cells go dormant. They basically hide, and then they get past the chemo. They sort of get through the onslaught, and then they start to multiply and grow, and now they're more resistant, kind of like antibiotic resistance. So now they know kind of how to figure out the workaround around the poison. So active cancer cells can double approximately every 90 days. So at 90 days, you've got one cell that turns to 2, and then you have one that turns to about a year, you got 16 cells. 2 years, you've got 250. At the 5-year point, you've got about 1 million cells. And then at 6 years, 7 and 10 years, at about 10 years, you're roughly at about 4 billion cells at 8 years. And then cancers are considered detectable when you've got a mass of cancer cells, about 4 billion or so cancer cells localized to one area. So by the time the mammogram can pick it up, you've already been fighting and developing that tumor for roughly 8 years. And at 10 years, it's considered fatal. So there's a very narrow window where you can catch the cancer with the mammogram before it becomes essentially fatal. So there's a lot of countries that are going away from standard mammography, like in the Nordic countries, in Sweden, Denmark. They're kind of moving away from standardized mammograms, because really the worst thing you would ever do if you had an active tumor, you'd never want to squeeze it, and they don't squeeze lightly. Thank God I don't have to go through that. But they squeeze it. I've heard it's horrible. So you don't want to squeeze an active tumor, and then you wouldn't want to irradiate it with the equivalent of about 10,000 chest x-rays. And then when they do find something, oftentimes, because I think the statistic from Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, found that you have to mammogram 2,500 people every year for 5 years to save one life. 2,500 people every year for 5 years to save one life. And over the course of that, you're going to have roughly 50 people that are going to get a cancer scare where they thought they had it, they went through a biopsy, they went through further treatment and workups, and then you're going to get about 5 people that get treated for cancer they never had. So to save one life, 2,500 people, treat 5 people for cancer that they never even had. So the recommendation, if you want to write this down, is you do breast thermography, and even for men, you can do whole body thermography. So it's basically a heat scan because cancer loves sugar. They're hotter. They put off more heat than a normal cell. So they do a full thermograph, which is no radiation. It's kind of like what we do for neuropathy when we're scanning the feet, but it's much more detailed, and they can find where the hot spots are. And if you find something on the thermography, then you do an ultrasound. Again, no radiation, much more detail. And if you find something suspicious on the ultrasound, then you do an MRI. So you go through those 3 steps. The problem is getting your primary care doc to sign off on it and to co-opt that may not be very easy. But at the end of the day, who cares? Whose health is it? Right? So we have to fight and advocate for ourselves. So here's the 3 steps to preventing and or reversing cancer. You have to stop cancer. You have to stop making it by getting to the cause. Because again, the cause is the cure. If we don't figure out what caused it, we can't ever get to the real cure. Specifically and safely starve and kill the cancer. And then we have to rebuild and strengthen the immune system. Now that seems like an oversimplification of such a complex and terrifying condition like cancer, but those are really the basic 3 steps. And those are different based on every individual case. Now, for these types of, like if someone came to me saying, hey, can you treat my active cancer? I would say no. Like I need some help co-managing that. If I got cancer myself, I would go to Mexico. I would go to Reno, Nevada. There's a lot of doctors that we would recommend to go to for that, but I'm more in the business of kind of helping people prevent it versus reversing it when you're at stage 4. So here's how to kill cancer. We're going to break some of these down a little bit later and in the handout that I'm going to give you. So number 1 is we have to starve the cancer. So if you have it or you're suspicious that you have it or you're really concerned and want to reverse it and not ever get it in the first place, there's a period of time where we have to starve the cancer by eliminating its primary fuel source, which is sugar and an amino acid called glutamine. Now there's specific ways to do that. There's some things you can do to kind of assist, but those are the two main fuels are sugar and glutamine. You have to cut off the cancer's blood supply by using anti-angiogenic botanical compounds. So it's basically herbs and spice. We'll kind of talk about this in just a minute. Fix the environment, moving it from acidic to alkaline. Induce that apoptosis by epigenetic manipulation. We'll talk about that. Balance hormones by eliminating estrogen dominance, because in almost all cancers, especially for women, estrogen will drive the progression of the cancer, and we have to employ those cytotoxic botanical compounds, and they're selectively cytotoxic, which means they kill the cancer cells, but they don't touch the healthy cells. Wouldn't that be an amazing way to do chemo? Like you just kill the cancer, it doesn't even harm the normal cells. And then remedy the inflammation and heal and protect the mitochondria. That's really the 9-step process. So again, the cause of cancer in all disease is when the cells become toxic, deficient, or they have a decrease in function. I want to kind of burn that into our minds. So what causes this? We have toxic emotions and mindset, so toxicity there. Remember, we're talking about toxicity and deficiency. So toxic emotions, toxic mindset, a deficiency in proper nerve supply, because your nervous system, as we'll talk about, is the master control system. So if your brain can't communicate with your body and your organs and your tissues can't heal and repair. Nutrition, you could have toxicity or deficiency, depending on what you're eating and what you're not eating. Oxygen and lean muscle, a deficiency in oxygen and lean muscle. And then toxicity, I couldn't find a good one for that, so toxicity. Right. So those are the 5 key things that we had to deal with. So when it comes to nutrition, there's 6 essentials of every cell, and these things are called essential for 2 reasons. Number 1 is your body can't make it, so it's essential. Like you got to get it from the outside in, like you got to go get it. It's essential. And the other reason it's essential is because it's essential. Like you got to have it or you're going to be dead, or you're not going to be healthy. Like you got to have it for those two reasons. Antioxidants are a big one, and we get most of those from like fruits and vegetables, from eating colored food with phytochemicals. So your above ground veggies and all your fruits. Fatty acids, particularly omega-3 fatty acids. So the ideal omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is roughly 4 to 1, but we'll go with 10 to 1. That's kind of the ideal ratio. So 10 omega-6s, 1 omega-3. So it should be basically really 4 to 1 is the better ratio. That's to keep inflammation under control. The problem is most Americans are 30 to 1 or 50 to 1. Schizophrenics are generally anywhere from 75 to 1 and up. So the bigger that ratio disparity, the bigger the gap gets between that ratio, the more our increase of inflammatory disease. Live enzymes, which come from live food. The problem is we eat mostly dead food. When you eat dead food, you don't get live enzymes. Vitamins, trace minerals, minerals and trace minerals. That's a lot of the reason we recommend that Relight product, the hydration product that we use, because it uses sea salt, that ancient sea salt. So we've been told that salt is bad. You got to avoid salt, and salt raises your blood pressure and causes hypertension. That's table salt, which is sodium chloride. 2 minerals. Sodium chloride is bleached table salt. Now, the ancient sea salt has up to 88 different minerals, the boron and the lithium and the chromium and all the other essential minerals, and it actually has a blood pressure lowering effect. So when you eat sea salt, it helps to lower blood pressure, reduce risk of hypertension, it increases your hydration. And when you're eating table salt, it increases your blood pressure, increases hypertension, and depletes minerals. And at the end of the day, like we just got to start eating real food. Like it's not rocket science. Protein, veggies, and fruit should be the bulk of our nutritional program. Protein would be like your beef, chicken, lamb, turkey, eggs, fish, a little bit of pork, great, like real food. And then you got your fruits and veggies, nuts and seeds, berries and beans, herbs and spices, omega-3s, right? Let's all sing that together. No, let's not do that. So a review of 170 studies over 17 countries revealed that people who ate the most fruits and veggies consistently had half the cancer rates of those who ate the least. So more fruits and veggies, less cancer. More than 20% reduction in risk of colorectal cancer from one additional daily serving of vegetables. That was it. That's simple. Men who ate fresh fruit every day had a 70% less chance of dying from cancer of the digestive tract than those that ate no fruit. You think, well, that's ridiculous. Everybody can eat an apple. A lot of people don't. Like you'd be amazed. A lot of people just eat processed, fake garbage all day long. So here's the traditional cancer systems, what they would call nutrition. So you've heard of Ensure, right? If you've ever gone through chemotherapy, usually they'll give you like a 6-pack of Ensure. They tried to give my wife that garbage when we were in the hospital. I was like, we're not touching that. They're like, really? Why would you not drink that? It tastes good. It's like a milkshake. It's like, exactly. So the main ingredients, it's got 20 grams of sugar. A can of Coke has 24 grams. So you're basically drinking a Coke. And the ingredients are water, corn maltodextrin, which is also known as sugar. And then you have regular sugar. And then you have milk protein concentrate, which is probably one of the lowest bioavailable proteins you can ever get your hands on. And then you have canola oil, which canola oil is healthy, right? You know what canola oil stands for? It's Canadian oil low acid. It's an industrial petrochemical that was developed in World War II as an industrial lubricant for the war machine, for all the equipment and all the factories. And it comes from genetically modified rapeseed oil, which they take rapeseed, which sounds horrible enough. It's a completely inedible crop, and they press it into a nasty sludge, which is so disgusting and stinky, they have to bleach it with hexane, and then they use sodium hydroxide, which is a known carcinogen, to emulsify it, and then it comes into your nice, healthy shelf where it says it's heart healthy on the outside of the bottle. Do you know how they get that American Heart Association stamp of approval on the outside of that? They pay for it. That's exactly right. You could stick that label on just about anything. And it's highly omega 6, raises your levels of inflammation. And there's a lot of debate about seed oils, and seed oils aren't that bad, and the research and the literature shows. Give me a break. Just we know that industrial lubricants are probably not good for the body. So, corn oil, which is just as bad as canola, soy protein, which is terrible, especially if you have cancer, because processed soy, it functions as a xenoestrogen, which turns little boys into little girls and little girls into cancer patients. That's the old kind of mantra. So you want to avoid soy. Now, fermented soy is great, like your miso and natto and your tempeh, like the stuff you get at the Japanese restaurant. Those are great. But like your soy milk and your soy cheese and your tofu and all this other disgusting stuff, avoid processed soy. And then you got your fake vitamins and minerals and stuff that we probably can't absorb anyway. So that's really the traditional nutritional approach when it comes to cancer. And we had a lady that was doing chemo. I won't name the hospital. But she took a picture of the candy bowl that they had on the front desk. Like when you check in, check out, you grab a handful of candy and you go do. So you feed your cancer while you're doing your chemo, essentially. So the importance of the colon and the bowels, your gut has 100 trillion microorganisms, and they provide protection from infection, regulates the metabolism, and it comprises about 80% of our immune system. So 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. The problem is over 90% of Americans have what's called a leaky gut. Anyone ever heard of leaky gut? It's very common. So your gut is basically one cell layer thick. So if you took your insides and pulled them out and spread it out, it's about the size of a tennis court, but it's one cell layer thick, but it works as a barrier between your internal environment and your bloodstream. Like it's keeping what you eat from getting into your bloodstream. So it functions a lot like a screen door. So it's like a screen door on the house. So it keeps the bugs out, but lets the oxygen come in and out. That's probably a decent analogy. But leaky gut is like when a kid takes a baseball and throws it through the screen door. Now you got a hole, so now the bugs are passing through into the bloodstream, travels to the brain, travels to the kidney, travels to the thyroid, and then it creates an inflammatory autoimmune reaction to wherever that attack happens. So that's why you see an explosion of thyroid issues and multiple sclerosis and a lot of neurodegenerative diseases that actually come from a leaky gut. So when you destroy what destroys the bacteria in the gut, antibiotics and a whole host of other medications, diets that are high in refined carbs, sugar, and processed food sensitivities like wheat and dairy, so gluten and casein, especially if you have like kids that are hypersensitive to anything. They have skin issues or they have attention deficit type issues. You got to get them off gluten and dairy ASAP. Because the gluten we use today is nothing like Jesus ate back in his day. People say, how could wheat be bad? Jesus ate bread and gave it to his disciples, and it was like the common food. Well, he was not eating Wonder Bread. Like, it was not bunny bread, right? It was like stone ground. You had to probably peel it apart with a pickaxe. Like it was real hearty bread with tons of protein and none of the processed gluten that we have today. So everything we have now is bleached, and they remove the husk, so it raises the blood sugar so much quicker. It's basically the same as, well, we talked about this. What's higher on the glycemic index, white bread or sugar? White bread. White bread raises your blood sugar faster than table sugar raises your blood sugar. And it's in your buns, in your croissants, in your biscuits, in your muffins, in your everything else. And then chronic stress, chronic infections, those are all part of that. And then we have a gut repair program. If you're interested, you can talk to Suzanne or ask me later. But we have a 6-week gut repair program where we give you all the supplements and all the nutritional advice. And here's what you eat on week 1 and 2 and week 3, 4, and 5. And we kind of walk you through an exact program to repair and heal the leaky gut. Essential fatty acids. The cell walls are made up of those fatty acids. That's why when you eat a French fry, or you eat a curly fry, or you eat some kind of bad oil or canola oil, that gets integrated into the cell wall. So it basically becomes part of us. So they think the half-life for a bad fat is roughly 150 days. So we're basically paying for French fries that we ate, back in January. Because when you eat those fats, you don't pee them out, you don't poop them out. They become integrated into your cell membranes and part of the cell wall. And then when that cell wall can't keep the good contents in and keep the toxins from getting in, then you get hypoxia, so the cell becomes low in oxygen and damages the mitochondria, which causes the downstream change in all the genetics. So it's just part of this whole cycle of cancer. And the cell walls need essential fatty acids, so again, the oxygen, the nutrients can enter and then create healthy cells. So we got to get enough omega-3 fatty acids. That's one of the essentials. I take those every single day. I take 3 of the little capsules that we carry here. I take those every single day because I'm not eating oily fish. I'm sorry. I'm not eating sardines. I'm not going to eat mackerel, herring. No thanks. Like I'll do a little tuna, a little bit of salmon, great, but I'm not going to eat that every single day. And to offset the amount of omega-6s that are going to get into my diet with the breads and the pastas and cookies and cakes and muffins and pastries, like I've got to do something to offset even the little bit of that I eat. So I've got to get more omega-3s. Or eat oily fish every day. If you look at Eskimos, they eat whale blubber for breakfast, whale blubber for lunch, they eat a whale blubber snack, and they might eat a seal for dinner. Like that's their entire diet is just oily, fatty fish and fatty animals. And guess what their rates of heart disease are? Non-existent. Guess how much cancer Eskimos and Inuits get? None. Guess what their cholesterol numbers are? They're through the roof, right? They get no cancer, no heart disease, and they've got high cholesterol, and they live a nice, ripe, long age. But guess what happens when they move to Franklin? Yeah, the wheels fall off. Like they adopt our lifestyle, and they get the same health benefit or some detriment. So remember when butter was bad for us? That was the whole thing is don't eat butter. You got to avoid butter, which, by the way, came from the sugar lobby. There was a guy named Ansel Keys that created this ridiculous, fraudulent 7-country study where he showed that in these 7 countries, the more fat they ate, the more heart disease they got. Well, he selectively removed about 7 other countries, so it made his study look like there was some correlation. But that really started the whole low-fat craze, low-fat cookies and low-fat muffins and low-fat ice cream and low-fat milk, and now we have more high-fat people than we've ever had at any point in history. So it ain't the fat that makes you fat, it's your body's inability to utilize it and burn it. And that's more of a metabolic workshop. So anyone ever heard of a PET scan? Heard of that? That's how you find the cancer. So they inject you with what? Connected to what? Dextrose. Sugar. So they take a radiographic tag and they attach it to a dextrose or a sugar molecule. They inject that into you and they wait a few minutes and they run you through a scanner and then they want to see where the sugar's collecting because cancer loves sugar. So they inject you with that dye attached to the sugar and then they find out where your tumor is because the uptake of glucose is so much greater with cancer cells than healthy cells. So they use sugar to find your tumor. But it doesn't matter what you eat if you've got cancer. Like sugar doesn't, like their whole mantra is that removing sugar from your diet has no impact on your cancer because it's all just genetic. You had the genes. And it's ridiculous on its face because they use it to find the cancer in the first place. Inflammation is the biggie. Do you know what diseases are linked to inflammation other than cancer? Yeah, name a disease. Arthritis, degenerative disease of the brain, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, fibromyalgia, they just multiple sclerosis. They all have an inflammatory response. So inflammation is the body's response to tissue damage, which is good. Like if you sprain your ankle, it gets big and red and swollen and fat. Good, because number one, it's painful. It keeps you from walking on that damaged, hurt foot. But then it's also bringing all the mediators of healing through the increased blood flow and inflammatory response. The problem is when that inflammation's everywhere. It's in your guts, in your knees, it's in your brain. So you don't want inflammation chronically, but you do like it to have it acutely because it's very, very beneficial. So the cause of inflammation, the linoleic acids, the bad fats, the corn oil, the sunflower, the safflower oil, the canola oil, the peanut, the soy. So what oil should we use? Butter. Amen. Can I get an amen for eggs and butter? Amen. Right? So butter, which I had, that's what I had for lunch today was 6 eggs with a ton of butter. Like that's my lunch. I felt great. Um, so butter and olive oil at low temperatures, because you don't want to heat butter too much. Just get it to melt, and that's good. Olive oil, drizzle it on your salad. Maybe get a little bit like in a saute. But if it smokes, it's rancid. So if you heat the butter to where it turns black, or you heat the olive oil till it smokes, you just turn that good fat into a bad fat. And then at high temperatures, we want avocado. Grapeseed's okay. I've kind of fallen out of love with grapeseed oil. It's a seed oil. It's probably the best seed oil, but I like avocado and coconut oil. And coconut, you can heat it up. Avocado, the same thing. It's got like a 400 something degree flash temperature. You can just cook the crap out of it, and it's very stable at high temperatures. And with coconut, you can rub it on your skin. You can put it in your mouth and do oil pulling. There's all kinds of fun stuff you can do with coconut. Sugar is another cause of inflammation, or the overconsumption of sugar. Now, here's the thing. If you're metabolically flexible and your cells are healthy and your insulin levels are inherently low and your fasting glucose runs low and your A1C is pretty low, a little bit of sugar is no big deal. Who cares? But do you know how much sugar travels through our bloodstream at any given time? It's about a teaspoon, roughly. If you have 2.5 teaspoons in your bloodstream at one time, you're a full-blown type 2 diabetic. So it's that little shift from one normal teaspoon of sugar that we can handle and is normal versus 2.5 teaspoons, which is basically full-blown type 2 diabetic. So we're pummeling our pancreas. It can only take so much. And then at some point you become insulin resistant, and that creates fatty liver disease and all these other inflammatory metabolic conditions, including cancer. Toxicity. I have a toxin workshop on my YouTube page. So if you want to go through there, we go through like personal care products, cleaning products, household, because there's all these little swaps. Instead of this, use this. Like for my body wash, I use that Native stuff. Yep, it's great. They sell it at Target now. We used to have to get that stuff online. I used to use like the Jason's deodorant, which is great. You just have to reapply it like every hour and a half, but it's great. But now they have good ones that last longer. So we're so much better than we were 20 years ago when we were talking about this stuff, because you had to like find like the hippy dippy little health food store in the corner of town. Now it's everywhere. Common allergens, again, like gluten and casein, and those are from milk and from wheat. Food sensitivities, which we can test for, and then psychological or emotional stress. Those are the big drivers of inflammation. Now, when it comes to emotional stress, if you want cancer, guaranteed to get cancer, live your life in that far left column. If you want cancer, develop a ton of self-pity. Just feel sorry for yourself all day long. If you want cancer, depression, rage, be a ragey person who's just explosive to be around. Have a list of resentments about a mile long. That's a great way to get cancer. Be apathetic to your health and to your life. Live with a bunch of toxic shame, pride, lust, which is sensual without heart. Like those are like the recipe to get cancer. So God gave us these 8 core feelings. And I'm here to propose the idea that there may just be 8 core feelings. There's 3 primary colors. Yes or no? Red, yellow, blue. Any big argument about that? 3 primary colors? But out of those 3 colors, how many colors can you get? Millions. Rainbow. There's 52 shades of green in Ireland. 52. From those 3 colors. There's 12 musical notes? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, quesadilla? I don't know. I don't do music. I don't know. But there's like a set number of musical notes, right? But out of those 12 notes, you can get rap music and classic rock and every other thing. We haven't even completed all the music that's going to be produced from those basic 12 notes. So there's 8 core feelings. You can't be an artist if you don't know the colors. You can't do music if you don't know the musical notes, and you can't live a full life unless you know the 8 core feelings, the 8 core emotions. So you can either learn these, learn how to use these, or you can learn to be used by them, because they will take over your life if you don't know how to identify and use those. This all comes out of a book called The Voice of the Heart. It's written by a guy named Dr. Chip Dodd. Highly, highly, highly. The Bible and that book have probably been the 2 most transformational books I've ever read, because it teaches you to remember the language you were given at birth. Because we all have these feelings, and we've had them since we were babies. Because when you're a baby, you cry if you're sad, you yell if you're angry, you cower if you're afraid, you scream if you're hurt, you reach out in your loneliness. Like, we do those feelings just on autopilot. Like, every kid does those magically. But then as we grow up and we become big people and become adults, we learn that those things are scary and those things are painful, and we need to avoid those things, and we need to start using our brain to hide what's happening inside of our heart, versus using our brain to articulate, express, and use what's happening in. Because all these have a gift. So the gift of sadness, if I lose when my dog died, I felt sad. Was I wrong? Was something bad about me that I felt sad when my dog died? No, I just lost one of our family members essentially. But I can move to self-pity where I feel sorry for myself, or I can move toward the gift of that sadness, which is acceptance. And acceptance is it's not okay, and it's okay that it's not okay, and it's going to be okay. There's 4 okays. It's not okay that our dog died. And the fact that it's not okay, and my wife is crying and my daughter's upset, like that's not okay. And ultimately, it's going to be okay. Right? That's the closest to peace we're ever going to get. Like hurt, healing, loneliness, like all these. I have a full training on this that we did back in April. It's on the YouTube page. We spent an hour kind of going through this in detail. But again, if you want cancer, live in that column on the left. That is a fast track to getting cancer, because it will ruin us from the inside out. Vitamin D3. We all know that vitamin D3 is selectively cytotoxic to cancer cells. They did a study with tamoxifen, which is a breast cancer drug. They're using less and less now, but back then it was tamoxifen, and they compared it to vitamin D. They put them in the petri dish, and the vitamin D was just as effective as the tamoxifen, the potent toxic cancer drug, at selectively killing the cancer cells, but it didn't harm the healthy cells. So this is a chart of disease on the left, and this the vitamin D level across the top. So you see at the top you have like vitamin D blood level. So you get your blood drawn, your vitamin D is at 6, 8, 10, 12, all the way up to 68. And then it shows the decreased risk or decreased incidence in those particular diseases and cancers based on the corresponding vitamin D level in the blood. So you look at like cancers all combined, you can get a 77% decrease in cancer if your blood level of vitamin D is at 38, which is a really poor level. Like, that's not a very good level. Breast cancer up to 83% if you get your vitamin D up to 50. Type 1 diabetes, which is kind of surprising, reduction up to 66% if you get your vitamin D level to about 53. And then fractures, falls, multiple sclerosis, heart attacks. That red line that's in there, that's drawn, is what the baseline level for the recommendation of what your blood level should be. They say between 30 and 100 is what your blood level. As long as you're above 30, you're fine. Well, if you look at 30, the only thing you're preventing is rickets. So, do you know anybody with rickets? No, where the bones are soft and they're both. No, nobody knows anyone like that. So they set up these recommended daily allowances based on deficiencies and toxicities. Not health and wellness, but based on how much do you have to not get the disease, and how much do you not need to have so you don't tip into toxicity. So within every recommended daily allowance, there's also a health and wellness range. So for vitamin D, the recommended daily allowance really should have your blood level should be between 70 to 90. So when you get your blood test done by your doctor, they'll say, yeah, your vitamin D looks good. Well, let me see the number. I want to see the number. Because if you tell me I'm 32 and I'm good, I'm not good. Like I want to be above 70. That's kind of the target number. And by the way, too, with COVID, we knew early on from a study from South Korea that there was a 98% reduction in COVID hospitalization and death in people with vitamin D levels above 60. Like they knew that data. We could have mass distributed vitamin D across the culture. It's cheap, it's easy to get, everybody could take it, but nobody did. It's just more vaccines and more drugs. And don't take the horse dewormers and the ivermectins and the hydroxychloroquines and suppression of natural cures so they could push a vaccine agenda. Because if there is a natural treatment or something they could use to prevent it, then they can't mandate the vaccine. They can't get the vaccine under emergency use authorization if there's a known treatment that's available. They can't make money. That's right. It's evil. So, and by the way, too, with cold and flu season, like this right now, we're in cold and flu season. That is such a joke from a marketing perspective. No such thing as a cold and flu season. Think the virus like hides in your closet and waits for the weather to get cold and then like jumps out to grab you. No, there's a vitamin D deficiency season and there's a toxicity season, which usually happens about right now, Halloween. We get that little bit of extra candy, so we're kind of snacking on a little bit of extra sugar here and there, and then we got Thanksgiving rolling around where we're going to gorge ourselves and eat till we throw up, and then we got holiday cookies and bake sales and Christmas, and like by the time we get through that onslaught of sugar and toxic food, and our vitamin D levels tank because when do you get vitamin D? When you're in the sun. When does the flu season happen? When you don't get the sun. When does flu season magically go away? When you start getting more sun, right? People start getting a little more health conscious. They get outdoors. They start moving around a little bit more, maybe eating a little bit less sugar, and then magically the flu goes away. Well, I'll just get a flu shot. How about that? Last year, the flu shot had a negative 29% efficacy, which means you were 29% more likely to have a flu-like illness if you got the flu shot than if you didn't get a flu shot. And on a good year, you might get 17% efficacy. So it's not a good, and the quadrivalent flu shot, the one they give to everybody that's got the 4 different strains, has about 25 micrograms of mercury, which is more than a 500-pound man should be exposed to according to the EPA standards. And that's through ingestion or inhalation, not through injection, bypassing the natural immune system, like right into the muscle. It's you eat it and your digestive system can process it and you can get it out. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. So the one we recommend, the one I take every day, is this little guy right here. It's like a little pearl. It's nothing. 10,000 units of vitamin D3 and 2,000 micrograms of K1 and K2. Because you always want to take your D3 with K1 and K2. Because otherwise you're going to get scarring of the arterial system. You're going to get too much calcium in the bloodstream. And then it boosts overall health while increasing white blood cells' ability to fight off proliferation of cancer cells. So it's anti-cancer. It's a whole host of other benefits. So with chiropractic, there's really some things you got to know. That their body is self-healing. We're self-healing, self-maintaining, self-regulating. If you cut your finger, it's going to do what? Heals. Sometimes or always? Always. Anybody walking around with a paper cut from like Bush 1 administration? No. You cut your finger, it's going to heal. Like it's pretty obvious, right? The nervous system is what controls all health and healing. Your brain makes electricity, essentially, electrochemical messages that go down your spinal cord and out the nerves into all your cells, organs, and tissues. Interference to the nervous system sabotages health and life. If you cut the nerves to the heart, guess what happens to the heart? Dies, right? Is that a belief or a fact? Any volunteers? Try that. And instead of cutting the nerve, what if you had a whiplash injury to the lower part of your neck, and instead of cutting the nerve, it put pressure, just a little bit of pressure on the nerve. But you leave it there for 30, 40 years. So what's happening slowly to the heart? Right. It's not getting the proper nerve supply. And here's one of the best examples of that. So this is lung cancer. So this is someone with a tumor in this lung, normal lung on this side. What caused that tumor to be in one lung and not the other lung? Was it genetics? Subluxation. Because people say, well, it's just it's your genetics. We have different genetics in that lung than the other lung. Or maybe it was cigarette smoke. What, did the smoke just go into that one lung and not the other lung? What's weak about that one lung that allowed the cancer to take hold and thrive that's not happening in the other lung? See that curvature? See that little kink in the spinal column right there? How it kind of curves to the side? Those nerves feed that lung tissue. So it's like you're stepping on the water hose that your brain is using to communicate with that lung. Might it just be, maybe, possibly, that choked off, strangulated nerve supply is affecting the health of that underlying organ? So that's really what chiropractic's about. Most people come for stiff necks and sore backs, and I got shooting pain down my leg, and I'm feeling symptoms, but symptoms are always just the tip of the iceberg. So if you're just getting adjusted for symptoms, it's like having a brand new car that you're just using the radio. Like, it's great radio, but like it's got a lot of other features too. Like, it's not just about symptoms and pain, it's about health. So with corrective care, we try to do some things with the spinal molding and the neck traction, the vibration, retake x-rays down the road so that we can see that we're getting that curve back. Because when that curve in our neck gets diminished, it starts stretching. The spinal cord is like the mushy part of my hand. So when you have a nice curve, the spinal cord is nice and loose and relaxed. When you lose the curve, or in some cases when that curve gets pushed in the opposite direction, it's stretching, tethering, and straining the spinal cord. So your brain's up. Which person gets cancer first, this one or this one? Which one gets heart disease first? Or diabetes, or whatever other condition you can name? And yes, there's other factors. That's why we talk about nutrition and supplements and exercise. But your nervous system is your master control system. So they showed that with chiropractic adjustments temporarily influence interleukin-2 response, which regulated after a single adjustment. And that's the chemical that they're desperately trying to make in a lab. They want to make a synthetic version of interleukin-2 because of its potent cancer-fighting abilities. And with one adjustment, you get an uptick in interleukin-2. Not forever, but for a period of time, you get a little uptick. Some of the warning signs like headaches, menstrual problems, high blood pressure, depression. If you go to your medical doctor with headaches, what are they going to give you? A drug. If you get menstrual problems, ladies, what are they going to give you? A drug. High blood pressure, you get a. By the way, too, when you're put on the high blood pressure drug, when do they tell you to stop taking it? Right. Depression, you get a drug. Numbness, tingling, every one of these things. They've got a pill for every ill, right? But are any of those come from a medication deficiency? Is a headache an aspirin deficiency? No. It's your body's way of trying to communicate to you that something's out of balance. There's toxicity or deficiency or some sort of decrease in cellular function. So it's the root cause of everything that we need, everything that we have. So there's a guy named Dr. Perot. His goal was to disprove chiropractic once and for all. He's like, I'm going to put these quacks out of business. So he did a study with, I think it was 300 cancer patients. So the ones with 5 years of consistent chiropractic care had immune systems that were roughly 400% stronger than cancer patients and 200% stronger than those that weren't getting regular care, just normal people with normal cells. So it showed about a 400% increase in people over the ones that had cancer. The 1918 flu is really the only reason that chiropractic still exists today. Without that flu, we probably would not have a profession as it exists today. Because prior to that 1918, they were putting chiropractors in jail for practicing medicine without a license. There's a whole shrine at my school of all the chiropractors that served jail time for practicing medicine without a license. But then when the 1918 flu happened, all the hospitals were overrun. They just couldn't take all the patients that were coming in. So the chiropractors created their own hospital, actually 2 of them. They created like a sanitarium where they would use like fresh air and sunshine and good nutrition. They'd get them adjusted. They'd get them up, move them around a lot during the day, get them breathing fresh air. And their results were they lost, I think they lost 1 patient in the thousands of patients they treated for the 1918 flu, whereas the medical system was losing people left and right. So that gained traction. Then we got some associations together and got into the medical boards and sort of our own boards. So thank God for the 1918 flu. Oxygen and lean muscle. So the cause of cancer is no longer a mystery. We know it occurs when any cell is denied 60% of its oxygen requirements. You have to get oxygen to feed those healthy cells. Cancer cells hate oxygen. So if you want to kill cancer, you got to get lots and lots of oxygen. And we'll talk about ozone and hyperbaric. We'll give you the handout for that in just a second. Exercise in cancer. Exercise will reduce the risk of breast cancer by up to 80%, colon cancer by 40%. Strong evidence between physical activity and decreased risk of endometrial cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer by up to 40%. And the greatest risk reduction was in those who were the most active. And walking to the mailbox doesn't count. Sorry. Walking the dog, kind of counts, depending. But if you're jogging with the dog, so really exercise is two things. It's that's exercise, and is exercise. So you gotta use your body. Use it or lose it, but exercise is when you push your body a little beyond your physiological capacity. If you're doing the same workout that you were doing with the same weights and the same mileage that you were doing 5 years ago, it's better than nothing. Don't get me wrong, but it's not exercising. So here's the yearly blood work that everybody needs to get. And if you give your medical doctor this list, he's probably going to look at you cross-eyed. So you're going to get your regular your CBC and your metabolic panel. Those are normal. Those are everybody's tests. You're going to get your lipids, which is common. Everybody gets their cholesterol done. Your lactose dehydrogenase is a cancer risk factor, insulin growth factor, your sedimentation rate, serum magnesium, TIBC, which is your iron binding capacity. Make sure you get your vitamin D. If you go to a primary care provider that doesn't routinely check your vitamin D levels without you having to ask them to, find another doctor. Like, would you go to a hairstylist that you always had to ask them to use a certain kind of color on your hair? No, you'd find another hairstylist, one that fought you if you wanted to use a certain shampoo. No, like you'd find another provider. But with our health, our most important asset, we'll just sub you. Well, he's the expert. I guess he knows. Who's responsible for your health? We are. So then who's got to be the expert? We do. Or at least moderately educated about how our body works. Hemoglobin A1C, CRP, C-reactive protein, those are inflammatory markers. Homocysteine is another inflammatory marker. Fasting glucose, and more importantly, in my opinion, fasting insulin. Has anyone had a fasting insulin drawn? We get our fasting glucose, we get our A1C, but no one gets their fasting insulin done. That number needs to be below 5. The scale will say below 25, but you really need your fasting insulin below 5. And that is a solid, tried and true cardiovascular, metabolic cancer risk marker. And one of the best things you can do is get one of these things called a GKI, which is a glucose ketone indicator. So it kind of works like a little insulin, check your finger and check your blood sugar kind of meter, but it's a ketone indicator. It checks the ratio of your ketones to your glucose. Prick your finger, put it on the little monitor. This one's called Keto Mojo. I think it's like $40 or something on Amazon. But you can actually see if you're in therapeutic ketosis. Because everybody, especially a cancer patient or someone who is concerned about cancer, they have to get their bodies into some degree of therapeutic ketosis. And we do that with a ketogenic diet and also with intermittent fasting. The other testing, this is what we can do here in the office. We have this Genova test, which shows you these 5 different biomarkers from your need for antioxidant support, your mitochondrial health, inflammation, exposure to toxins, and methylation support. Show you this real quick. So in this panel, you get to see like your antioxidants, vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, CoQ10, your B vitamins, your minerals, your essential fatty acids, your GI and your gut support like digestive enzymes and probiotics. Shows you what those things mean and where you get those from your diet. It shows you your B vitamin status and where you get those and where you get them from your diet. You get your microbiome digestive support, functional imbalances. Shows you all the nerdy biochemistry if you want to sit and but it shows you where your pathways break down. Do you know what the most important nutrient is to the human body? maybe. It's the one you're lacking, or the ones you're lacking. The most important nutrient is the one your body needs that you're not getting enough of, right? So how do you know? And then this goes into malabsorption, gut health, cellular energy or mitochondrial health, neurotransmitters, toxins, and then one of the really cool things on this is it can give you all the toxic elements like lead, mercury, aluminum, arsenic, barium. It kind of shows you where this person's really high in tin. And then we could talk about detox strategies to get that out. Genetic SNPs like ApoE4, which is your risk factor for Alzheimer's and dementia. That can be and these are one-time, like these here, the MTHFR and the ApoE. Those are one-time tests. You never need to get them done again because those are your genetic predispositions and tendencies. They're not going to change. You just need to know how to supplement and diet for those existing SNPs. Anyway, and then back to it here real quick. We're almost done. So again, toxic mindset and emotions, deficiency in nerve supply, toxicities and deficiencies of nutrition, deficiency in oxygen and lean muscle, and then too much toxicity. Those are the causes, the cure. So this is a colleague of mine, Dr. Pete. He practices out in Knoxville, in the Knoxville area. And he was diagnosed about a year ago. It'll be a year in the end of November with a grade 4 diffuse astrocytoma. Terminal cancer, which they told him if he had 9 months to live, he'd be lucky. So he went in, they found his tumor, that big mass on the left side of his brain. It was 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. So he had that taken out, and that's him praying with the hospital staff, which I think is amazing. He actually started a charity, which is like a gospel evangelistic program. Matthew 10 is the name of his organization, which is phenomenal. If you want to donate money to his charity, it's the best. But he spreads the gospel all around the world. And he did this protocol, which I'm going to show you here real quick. This is my gift to you. I'll show you how to get it here in a second. So this is his entire protocol. It's 83 pages, everything he did. There's a little bit about him and his story. But then you get into the metabolic strategies like the Keto Mojo to figure out if you're in ketosis, how to do intermittent fasting, water fast, juicing, extra virgin olive oil, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, beta glucans, melatonin, infrared saunas, ozone, red light therapy, vagal nerve stimulation, PEMF, chiropractic care, Beamer. It just goes on and on and on. Some strategies with like coffee enemas. We have a coffee enema machine here. Do you want to try? You do that at home. Foot baths, minerals, vibration, grounding, sunlight exposure, oxygen, air purifiers. What water filter do I get for my house? All the supplements and the herbs and those botanical cytotoxic chemicals like black seed oil, soursop, methylene blue, ivermectin, fenbendazole, all the newest things that are coming out in terms of cancer research. The right books to read, the Gerson therapy, which is a classic, radical remission, Chris beat cancer, that's another really good one. The Budwig protocol, which is basically flaxseed oil and then cottage cheese, and then you blend that up, and it's highly anti-inflammatory and kills cancer cells because it oxygenates those cells. Ketogenic diet, so what healthy fats, shopping list, recipes, what to eat on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then here's some scriptures that relate to healing. I thought that was really cool that he put those in there. And then his functional medicine program, if you have cancer, here's he gives you some references on like what doctors to call if you're wanting to take a more natural route. So the last slide is this QR code, eventually. So if you take out your little cellular telephones, you can scan that code, and that'll take you right to the link where you put in your email, and he'll email you that guide that we just gave. So, all right, that's it, guys. So I'll stick around for any questions and let me know. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Where do we get that kind of
We can do it here.
blood? You can't.
Yeah, you just have to pay cash for it.
Well,
And then, yeah, we just order it. And then you could probably get it at your primary care, but the problem with going through insurance is if you're going to order each of those tests that you order, there has to be a diagnostic rationale for why they're ordering that test. So if you're going to go through insurance, they're not going to be able to create enough diagnostic criteria to justify Medicare or Blue Cross paying for all those individual tests. So they're not going to want that headache more than likely. Yeah.
About that flu shot,
Mhm.
I found out from experience that it's 100% effective because 100% that I've got it, I've gotten the flu.
100% effective.
I found out that's the one they call the flu shot. But they'll
I call it the
deny
full shot.
So they'll say that no, there's no way it can happen. I'm sorry, what's your question?
No, I said I call it the full FFOOL shot.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but they will deny that you can get the flu after taking it, and I did it.
well, how many people have you known that got the flu shot and got sick like
Yeah.
immediately?
Yeah.
Well, at least I got the flu shot because it would have been worse.
Right.
That's how they sold the COVID shot. It's like, oh, well, it would have been worse if I didn't get my 9 boosters.
Every time I got it, I got the flu.
Right.
So I found it to be 100% effective.
It works, just not the way you wanted it to.
That's why they call it the flu shot.
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
What was that?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
What was that test that before the doctor's thing that you showed up there?
Yeah, yeah. Is everybody? I can come back to this. Did you get it there, Rita? This one here.
Yeah.
So it's a kit that we give you. So it's a little kit, and you take a blood sample. So you prick your finger and you put it in these little things. And then you pee in a cup. So you take a urine sample and you do a cheek swab. You put it in a little deal and you send it off. And then it sends me that report. And then you and I sit down and we go over it together. Now that's about $800. So just so you know. But it is the most comprehensive. It's the test underneath what you learned from the blood work. You're talking about getting to like the root cause of these problems. Because if your homocysteine's high, why? And if your white blood cells are suppressed, why? So even when you get some of those other more extensive blood tests, it doesn't really answer the question of why is it like that and what do I do about it? So that just gives a much more deep dive. I was surprised when I did mine, I was deficient in B6 and my omega-3 ratio was horrible. I was like, well, I thought I was doing pretty good. Like I thought, kind of had a handle on all that stuff, but clearly I did not. So it gives you, even if you feel good and you feel like you're doing fine, you're not going to know, because when do symptoms show up? What's the first symptom of heart disease? A heart attack. And about half the people that have their first heart attack will die. So half the people, their first symptom is death. Right? Never even had any symptoms. When do you feel cancer? When do you feel diabetes? When do you feel cavities in your teeth? So by the time we feel these problems, they're already there. They've already happened. So it's always better to get to them earlier than later.
I have another question.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of Viome?
Viome?
V-I-O-M-E.
I'm not sure. What's that?
Well, it's something I just experimented with. And they take part of your, if they do a test, a deep test.
Stool sample?
Yes.
Yeah. Poop in the tray, do a little science project. I've done those before.
Yeah.
One time.
Are they effective?
Yeah, it picked up some gut dysbiosis things with me.
Yeah.
It's not a pleasant test. And then you got to keep it in your fridge. My wife was like, "What is that?" In your freezer, I mean.
This is much smaller.
Yes.
So would you say that if we were to do this, you have all of this available for us here?
Mm-hmm. We do.
Okay.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
Yep. Just set up a time. Let me get this young lady first. I'm sorry.
I just want to ask you. You mentioned about the Alaskans eating blubber,
Uh-huh.
and but the cholesterol levels and that. I'm just reading mixed things about. As soon as your cholesterol starts going up, the doctor's like, you need to be on a statin.
Yeah.
And then I'm seeing, is that really true? And then in my case, I had a cardiac outflow in zero.
Mhm.
But the doctor told me you have to be on a statin.
Of course.
What's that about? What's
So,
the cholesterol issue?
yeah. Well, first of all, if you look at centenarians, those are people who live to over 100 or 100 above, their LDL cholesterol is historically much higher than the recommended amount. And they're fasting. Like, so in the early 1980s, the normal cholesterol level was 300. And then they lowered it to 240. And then they lowered it to 220. Now they get to 200. So they keep lowering the cholesterol recommendation, but the rates of heart disease keep climbing. Now, statins can provide some anti-inflammatory effect. That seems to be the mechanism with which they do sometimes benefit people. But if you ask your doctor, if I take this drug every day for 5 years, what's the chance out of 100? What's the chance that I'm going to get a benefit? And the answer is less than 1. There's a thing called a number needed to treat, NNT. Every drug has an NNT number. It's how many people you have to put on the drug to get one to prevent one outcome that it's trying to prevent. The NNT number for primary prevention, trying to prevent your first heart attack, stroke, or cardiovascular event with a statin drug, is about 135. So you got to put 135 people on that drug every day for 5 years to prevent one heart attack, stroke, or cardiovascular event. And the other 134 get no benefit, or they get the side effects, or they get the whatever else. Cut out the sugar, cut out the grains, increase the omega-3s. If you need, take red yeast rice and slow-release niacin, then you can get the same cholesterol-lowering effects without any of the side effects.
I was going to ask, what do you recommend for dosage for the omega-3s?
Depends. What's your number? Like if you're starting at 25, we might need to put you on 50,000 a day for 30 days and retest. If you're at 60 and want to go to 70, you might do 5 or 10,000 a day. You kind of have to play around with that a little bit for about a year to 2 years, where you kind of know, like, I took this much and this was my level. So you get it checked every 3 to 6 months to kind of see. Like, I've got mine pretty dialed in. I don't really take vitamin D till about early October. I take 10,000 a day, and then I'll quit taking it in about mid-April. Because when you're in the sun, you get about 35,000 units of vitamin D for 20 minutes. We need 20 minutes of sun every day in our bathing suit with no sunscreen. And if the darker your skin is, the more sun you need to raise your vitamin D levels.
Then when you have skin cancer issues,
Yeah.
then what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of a catch-22 because you don't want to burn the skin.
Yeah.
But they've terrified us that if we get in the sun, I'm going to get cancer. The correlative quotient between sun exposure and cancer is really not what they say it is. Because the cultures that get the most sun tend to historically have the lowest rates of skin cancer. When you get these pasty European Irish descent people and they go out and get burnt twice a year because they're on vacation, now that's not good for the skin. But like there's about 400 cases of anal melanoma every year. Where are they getting that from? Unless you're getting sun in a very unique posture, like it's not all from the sun, right?
What's funny because I ended up with skin cancer on the base of my tongue.
What are you doing? Art, what kind of... My grandfather had it on the back of his knee, and he swore it was from the riding lawnmower. I was like, "What? How you riding that thing? You doing like Superman style? Like it's..." Yeah, you were not getting this. And if it was truly just from the sun, we get it on the tip of our nose, forehead, and the back of our hands, because those are the areas with the most sun exposure. So we need sun exposure. We just need consistent, low-level, regular amounts of it. So, yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, Dr. Lorraine Dave said that when people accuse the sun of causing skin cancer, the problem is not with the sun, it's with our diet.
Right. It's our toxic internal environment, which the burn on the skin tends to oxidize and cause some of those lesions. We're hunter-gatherers. We're supposed to be naked, climbing trees, wearing a loincloth. Like, for crying out loud, that's our genetic design. But now we get terrified of the sun. We live indoors, and dying of skin cancer.
And on those, eight ways to be if you want to get cancer,
Uh-huh.
how does it work if you're not really that way, but you live with some people that are that way?
It's called surrender and acceptance.
Or run, I guess, get away from it.
That might be an option too, depending on if you're wearing a ring that they're wearing the other side of.
How much does it affect somebody that has to be around that?
You just have to find ways to refill yourself spiritually and emotionally. Like, which means you typically have to have a ship of fellows, a fellowship of people who can pour into you spiritually and emotionally and can hold space. And a lot of times that's not my spouse's job. I have a Friday men's group where I can go in and just dump all my stuff, and I don't have to let her carry that stuff. So we need people outside of, our intimate relationships to do life. Yes, sir.
I got a simple question. Supplements in gummy forms. Are you allowed, are those effective?
How much sugar's in them?
I don't know. That's my point. If I'm buying these supplements.
Get 4 micrograms of vitamin D and 6 grams of sugar. I think they have a place. I definitely would not want any with sugar, artificial sweeteners, or a lot of the colors and the dyes and that kind of thing. I give them to my 4-year-old. So if you're over the age of 4, no more gummies. No. It depends. It depends what's in them and really the manufacturer. You know what the most expensive vitamin is? It's the one you take that doesn't do anything for you. Like, there's a lot of overpriced garbage out there, but there's not a lot of really good quality vitamins that are really cheap. You're never going to find that because their raw materials are so expensive. But you can find a lot of overpriced junk out there. But if you can get a bottle at Walgreens that's got like 400 capsules and it lasts for 20 years on the shelf with no expiration date, your body's probably not going to be able to do a lot with that. Centrum was sued back in the late 90s by a septic company. They sued Centrum because it kept clogging up their system because you could still read Centrum on the label. Like, they weren't even wearing the label off of that thing. So, yeah, don't waste your money. Yes, sir.
That's how expensive fish food.
That's it.
We have too much D3.
Yes.
What's the effect?
Flu-like symptoms and hypercalcemia. So too much, usually if you're taking one with K2, you're going to offset the hypercalcemia, too much calcium in the blood. But yeah, excess vitamin D in some people, they say some people it's over 100. I've seen some cases where it's upwards of 400 till you get into that level of toxicity. And make sure you don't have sarcoidosis.
What is the K1?
K1, K2 is a mineral that helps to shuttle the calcium, because when you're taking vitamin D, you're going to get an increase in calcium in the blood. So it helps to pull that calcium out of the blood and get it into the tissues that it's needed in. And it's got some other absorption. What's that? Yeah, that one's got the D3 and the K1 and the K2 with it, yeah.
Now, is that mineral in the sea salt?
Yes, depending on which one you've got and how much of it that you're consuming.
Because I bought the pink sea salt. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's in.
the pink Himalayan.
Yeah.
Now,
Better than.
actually, that I just lied to you. That's a fat soluble vitamin, so it's not going to be found in a granular table or sea salt.
Okay.
It's going to be like a fatty, oily. So you're really going to have to get.
The sea salt from you guys. Huh?
Yeah, but our sea salt doesn't have K2 either. So it's a fat soluble vitamin. It's not a mineral. I think I misspoke when I said that. So, yeah. The blood's like rushing out of my brain.
Have you heard of these people that work outside, like builders and so forth, and the guys have their shirts off, but still, even with that, in the summertime, when it's nice and sunny, that they still have low vitamin D levels.
Sure.
I've heard of that, and that's why they said to take a supplement.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using sunscreen, your SPF of 8 is going to block about 90% of your
So
vitamin D
because they use
absorption.
sunscreen,
Could be, or they could just be low absorbers. Everybody's different.
poison anyway.
And if they're darker skinned, they're going to have more sun to raise. There's probably multiple factors. Yeah. Anybody else?
Question, but I don't think I should ask it from all these people, but ask you afterwards.
Sure. Keep it PG-13. No. All right, guys. I'll hang around if anybody's got questions. But thank you. You guys have been a great audience. So thank you so much.